coils here. Now then, crew, and welcome back to the Andy Mechanic YouTube channel. If it's your first time on this channel, then welcome to you. There's hundreds of videos on here which cover repairs and bits and pieces on cars and motorcycles and all sorts of stuff, so have a look around. For those of you that are returning, it's good to see you back, crew. Okay, this is going to be a generic video on how to basically capture a primary winding voltage and current flow using a PicoScope. Now the PicoScope that I've got here is the 6000 Automotive series, and it's bloody good actually. There's the spec on the back in case you want to see any specs. It's a 4-channel scope. It can cope with up to 200 volts. Very, very useful. Now I've got an ATV up on the hoist at the moment, and I just want to check to make sure that basically the ignition system is working as it should do. It's a pretty new bike, so it shouldn't be a problem, but I thought this would be a great opportunity to make a quick video on showing you how to capture this information using the scope. And I'm just going to cover a few of the basics of what the voltage waveform means, certain parts of the waveform, what's really going on, and of course again with the current flow, the waveform that's shown by that. Now, in order to capture the current flow, we need to use an amp clamp in conjunction with the scope. And the one that I've got here is another part of the PicoScope Automotive kit, and it's that one there. Look, and it's a TA018, and this can do up to 20 amps. It's got two settings, 20 amps or 60 amps. Now we're going to use the 20 amp setting, and basically for every 100 millivolts on the PicoScope, on the graph, that equates to 1 amp of current flow. That's very important. We need to know that later on. Now, also, when you're measuring the voltage on the primary circuit of an ignition coil, it's not just 12 volts. There's an induced voltage to be aware of. When that winding, or when the current flow through the primary winding is broken, i.e. the ECU disconnects the ground side of the coil, the current flow stops, and the magnetic field that's built up around that winding then collapses, which is exactly what the coil is supposed to do, and it induces a voltage into the secondary winding, and that's our spark. And we get a much higher voltage because there's more windings on the secondary than there is the primary, but that's a different subject altogether. But it does also induce a voltage back into itself on the primary circuit, and that can be up to 400 volts. Now the Pico that I've got only goes up to 200. If we just plumb that straight in, it could cause some pretty serious internal damage, and it's, you know, to any scope, not just the PicoScope. I mean, I'm sure that there's some safety circuitry in there, but I don't want to risk it. So what we have to do is use an attenuator, and again I've got one here. This is a 10-to-1 attenuator. You can also get 20-to-1, and I'm sure you can get lots of other ones as well, but this one is a 10-to-1, which means if we get a voltage induced of, let's say, 400 volts, then we're only going to see 40 volts on the screen on the scope. And we've got to do a calculation from that to work out what the real voltage is. Dead easy, really. Okay, so I'm going to plumb everything up, and I'll see you over at the laptop, and we'll get the scope fired up, and we'll take some readings. Here we go. Okay, so first job is we'll plug in the USB cable, because that's at the back, get it out of the way. Right, and we've got the attenuator here, which is going to go onto channel A for the voltage. So we'll pop that on there. Cool, that's all locked into place. And we need the blue channel. There we go. Right, this is back probed into the grounding wire of the primary circuit. And you can do it off the coil as well if you want. You can just put your crocodile clip onto the coil negative on the primary. Right, that's all done. And all that's left to do now is to connect up our amp clamp. And of course, not forget to turn it on. Right, there we go. Right, that's all done. We'll head over to the laptop and we'll set the scope up. Right, first job is going to be to start our screen recorder, which is the Screencast-O-Matic, which I use, pretty good. So we'll start that. Okay, and then we'll start the scope software. Excellent. Right, so channel A is our voltage, so we need to set that to 50 volts because 20 volts would be too low. That would only give us, even with the attenuator, it's only going to give us 200 volts, and we know that the induced voltage is going to be a lot higher than that, so we'll go for 50. That's all good. That's that done, and we need to turn on channel B, and we can just go for 1 volt plus or minus. That's going to be the equivalent of 10 amps, and pretty sure there won't be 10 amps flowing through a little coil like that. And we're going to set our time base as well, so let's go for 500 millisecond divisions. Okay, we'll just stop that. There we go. And we're just going to move the amperage a bit further down. There we go, look. That should be low enough. We need to leave a bit of room at the top of the blue line because of that induced voltage. There's our 40 volt line, so it shouldn't really go much beyond that, really. Okay, well, I'll start the bike and we'll capture a couple of waveforms. Here we go. Fantastic. Okay. What am I doing? And you're on the wrong one. 1 volt. We said, didn't we? Right, back on the screens. Oh, idiot. Guess who had the amp clamp the wrong way around? What a naughty. Right, we'll do it again. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so that's the this is the kind of waveform you will get if you put the amp clamp on in the correct direction. Right, let's go back to the start and see what we've got. So we can zoom right in. It's pretty cool. Now I'm just going to take one event so we can forget all the rest for now. And we're just going to look at one single event. Okay, now in order to create a spark, let's move this box out of the way. Look, stick that up the top. Don't need to work up there yet. To create a spark, we first need to run a current through the primary winding, and the period of time that the current is flowing for is called the dwell period. And you can see here, look, we've got a voltage, and we can measure that. And that voltage is pretty approximate because it's pretty low scale at the moment. We've got on there 1.15 volts, which is the equivalent with a 10 to 1 attenuator of 11.5 volts, which is about battery voltage. So that's exactly what we'd expect. Now, when that, in order to initiate the current flow, the ECU has to put that wire, that grounding wire, to ground. The earth side of the coil has to be connected to ground, and then we now have a circuit. So current starts to flow, and if you look on the red line here, this is channel B, we've got at exactly the same point, we've got current starting to flow, and that current obviously is increasing, and then it starts to level out. So it reaches a maximum level. So we can measure that as well. Let's see how much current's flowing. Yeah, little red square. Perfect. Stick that down there. And we've got, what have we got on there? 393 millivolts. Now remember, 100 millivolts is equal to 1 amp. So we've got basically 3.9 amps of current at maximum flowing through the primary winding. Excellent. Okay, so that's the dwell period, and we can measure how long that dwell period is for. So we'll just close that, and then we can use our little time-based measurers, and we can put one here, look where it starts, and we can put one where the dwell circuit is broken, current stops flowing there, and we've got a dwell period at idle of just over 17 milliseconds, which is pretty good. It's quite a long dwell period. If we scoot forward while I was revving the bike up, so we'll just get rid of that, we'll just get rid of that, we go across and we'll see all these little lines get a lot closer together because the engine was revving. So this is probably an area here that's, in fact, let's do it professionally. Let's just get rid of that again. And we can go up here and choose that, and we can basically find the point where they're closest together, which is about here. And we can zoom in on that, choose one of those. Bring it down a bit so we can see both what's going on. There's another dwell period. Okay, let's measure that one. Because remember, the engine's revving a heck of a lot faster now. So there's the start. And there's the finish. What have we got? Oh wow, 3.3 milliseconds. So the dwell, the charging period for that primary winding, the period of time when there's current flowing, is a much, much shorter period of time, which you know, you'd think, well, really the spark's not going to be quite as strong, is it? Because it hasn't, the magnetic field hasn't had time to build up. If you see there, look, the actual line, it doesn't plateau, it's still climbing. And we can actually measure the current flow on that, and to see if it attained its what was it, 3.9 amps, I think it was. So let's measure that again and see what we're getting now at a higher RPM. Okay, so we've got, yeah, so we've only got 300 millivolts, so we're down to 3 amps. So we've effectively lost 25% of the strength of the spark. Wow, that's pretty cool. It's amazing how you can zoom in and see all the detail. Okay, and we'll also notice that on the actual voltage we're getting a lot more oscillations. The signal's a lot more, you know, much messier signal in basic terms. The voltage is all over the place. So let's go back to a simpler waveform to study. So we'll go back to page 1 when the bike was running at idle. Oh, sorry, page 2. There we go. Look, there's the first one, and we can just zoom in on that. There's the first event. Okay, and we can get there we are. We've got our current flow as well. So we've already covered the dwell period, and we've seen how the dwell period greatly reduces as engine RPM increases. There's basically just less time available to charge that coil up, charge the primary. Okay, so now we can look at the actual voltage going on in the primary winding, and at the time that the current ceases to flow, which is, you know, you can see here, look, we're getting the sort of 4 amps flowing through. All of a sudden we're back down to 0. You'll see we've got an induced voltage on that winding, and that's this big spike here, and we can measure that. So let's see what we get on there. There we go, look, so we're getting 37.82, nearly 38 volts. So that would be equivalent to 380, or actually 378 volts being induced into that winding. Now, the next thing to look at, and that does oscillate, because as soon as a voltage is induced into the winding, it in itself creates another magnetic field, and then that collapses, and that's why we get this oscillation period here. If we just scan across just a bit further, there's one more thing I can show you, and that's the burn time. How to recognize the period of time that the spark is actually burning at the plug is measured between the start, the peak of that spike there, or the start of that peak, right down to where you start to see this nice smooth oscillation at the end. So again, we can measure that. We can put our little markers on there. So the spark starts here and it finishes just about there. So the spark burn time is almost 1 millisecond. It's 0.9 of a millisecond. I can't pronounce that US. God knows what it means. But you know, it's basically, if that was 1,000 US, that's 1 millisecond. So it's just under a millisecond burn time. Now, if we scoot across to where the engine was being revved really high, so almost maximum RPM, which is around this area here again. So we'll just zoom into one of those. Oh, didn't want that. Close that, there we go. And just zoom into that. There we go. And we want to measure burn time again, so we'll just choose one of the events. Right, okay, so you can see now there's almost 2 very high induced voltages there, one after another. Okay, so burn time starts here and ends, I would say it probably ends here, actually, looking at that. Yeah. Alright, so we've got a burn time now of almost a third, just over a third of what it was previously. So the spark period is a lot shorter as well. Isn't it great that we can see all this kind of accuracy? Wow, okay, well, I want to save that, so File, Save As, and then I did save a couple earlier on, doing some different stuff, so let's just save that on there, 3, save, perfect. Right, back to the bench, I think. Now, I really have only just brushed the surface of interpreting a primary winding on the ignition circuit as regards what each part of the waveform means. Just the basic stuff, and we're all learning. And there's some really good YouTube channels out there which will cover this in a lot more depth. I mean, you should check out South Main Auto, Eric O. He's got a fantastic channel now. He does a lot of diagnostics using the PicoScope, as well as a heck of a lot of mechanical repairs as well. So if you're interested to learn more, check his channel out. And also Ivan on Pine Hollow Auto Diagnostics. Again, lots of scope work and EFI diagnostics with Ivan. Very, very clever chap. Always amazing me the kind of stuff that he comes up with and the diagnostics that he performs. And he doesn't just do cars, man, he's been doing computer stuff and all sorts. Good lad. Okay, so the kit that we used, again, just to quickly clarify, there was the little amp clamp, which I fitted the wrong way around. It's very important that you get the direction of current flow correct on the clamp, otherwise you'll get the wrong, get an inverse waveform on the screen, which is exactly what I got. Although I knew what I'd done. I did it, obviously, to show you. And I also used an attenuator because the voltage was too high. That induced voltage was almost 400 volts. Well, that would damage the scope, I'm sure. Especially long term. It might have some sort of short term protection in there, but hey, these things are pretty expensive, so you've got to look after them. So there you go. That was the Pico that I used, and there's the stuff on the back again. Incredibly useful piece of kit. You've got the 4 channels, and without it, what would you use? You can't use a multimeter, can you? It's not going to work. Everything's happening way too fast, and to be able to capture that waveform and be able to zoom in and look at the detail, that's what you need these days. Right, well, if you found the video helpful, why not click on the subscribe button? You'll see a little gear icon turn up. Click on the gear icon, and then you can tick the box and turn on notifications. You'll also, actually, I jumped the gun there. So once you turn on notifications, our friends at YouTube will send you an email as and when I upload any new videos. You'll also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Google+, and Twitter. And feel free to communicate through any of those portals. Now, I also have a Patreon account as well. So if you found this video super helpful, and it helped to save a few dollars on your car repairs or getting your motorcycle fixed, then if you want to show some appreciation, just drop onto the Patreon account, become a patron, And you know, whatever you send across is much appreciated. It really is. We don't get a lot, but whatever comes through does help, because end of the day, knocking these videos together, it's not for free. It does cost money and a heck of a lot of time. And my main aim for doing this is to help you guys and to pass on the knowledge, because that was one of the things that I realized when I was a lecturer for Unitech was, you know, the number of people out there that are getting into automotive and doing diagnostics and even just mechanical repairs. There seems to be a lot less interest in the current generation than there was previously. They're all going off and doing coding and writing computer games and all that kind of stuff, and we really have a huge shortfall in good techs within the automotive industry here in New Zealand for sure. And you know, most likely that's replicated around the world as well. People are just less interested in doing this job, but it's a very technical job now with all the electronics around, and we have to have the equipment and the knowledge to be able to diagnose these faults. So I would recommend, you know, find some other YouTube channels out there. There's some really good ones on diagnostics, and if you're interested, you know, you're going to have to watch a lot of stuff, but man, it's pretty cool what's going on nowadays. Okay, well, that's enough from me, enough waffle. As always, I'll see you next time. Cheers, crew. Over and out. Intro girl, Sam. How are you?
Back.
You're back! Fantastic.
So
I know, and I've got a new shirt, so I thought it's only right that I give you a new shirt too, so there you go.
So excited for my new shirt, and I don't have to wear different shirts every day. And as a classic Tool Girl Sam move, I am going to wear it like this. Wow, would you look at that? I'd say that is a great present for your girlfriend if she's into tools. If she's not, she's probably into tools because you're a tool. See what I did there? Tool Girl shirt, perfect.